Hey guys, it's Amy here, and today I bring you my March wrap-up. I only read 4 books this month because it's been pretty busy and crazy with university, but 4 books is better than none, so let's get on to them. The first book I read in March, and probably one of the reasons why I didn't read so many books, was The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. The reason why this book probably stopped me from reading more books in the month of March is because it was absolutely phenomenal, and after reading it I felt I couldn't pick up another book for quite a while. It probably took me about 2 weeks to pick up another book, and even then when I did, I just didn't think it was going to compare to this story, and I was never going to read anything that came anywhere near the emotions that I felt in this book. As with most people, I cried my eyes out at the end of this novel, and all the way through there were moments that I just felt so touched by the story of the characters. The story is narrated by Death, and I found this a really interesting perspective to read through. I found some of the things that Death said in this novel and some of the issues, I guess, that have been brought up from this to be quite poignant and really affected me quite deeply after reading it. I also went to see the film a couple of weeks after I finished the book, and it didn't disappoint. I really loved it. I thought the actors portrayed the characters absolutely fantastically, but it was a lot shorter than the book, obviously, because they had to condense it down. So there were some things that happened in the book that didn't happen in the film, but I really would have loved to have seen them, so that was a shame. I actually cannot fault this book. Everything for me was absolutely perfect, and the writing style was fantastic. It kept me going throughout the whole book. And I am not the type of person to pick up a book about war. This is probably why it took me so long to pick the book up to begin with, because I don't like reading about war, and I don't like reading things like this because they make me sad. But this made me sad in a good way, I guess. If you haven't picked up this book yet and you're not doing so because you feel it's not going to live up to the expectations of what you think it will be, I strongly recommend that you do, because it met every expectation that I had and lived up to all the hype that everyone recommended this book to me, and it was brilliant. 5 out of 5 stars. So as I said, it took me a few weeks to read another book, and the next book I read was actually for university, something that one of my lecturers suggested that I read to help with the project that I'm currently working on, and that book was Invisible Cities by Italo Calvino. Now, as you can probably see, this is a very, very short book, and it took me quite a while to get through. I'm not gonna lie, I found the writing to be quite complex and difficult to read at some point. This is an odd book, but an interesting one if you get all the way through it. Basically, Marco Polo, the explorer, is with the Chinese ruler Kublai Khan, and I think that's how you say his name, and he's describing many cities that he's seen over his adventures and exploring. All these cities are vast and amazing and have all these different wonders about them, but as the book goes on it becomes evident that maybe he's just talking about one place, which is Venice. Near the beginning of the book, the cities he describes are really quite fluffy and lovely and wonderful cities to live in, but as you get nearer the end of the book they become more dark and focus more on life and death and light and dark and heaven and hell and those kind of things. This is a really difficult book to kind of describe to you, so if you haven't read it you're probably not going to really get what I'm talking about, but either way, if you're interested in this kind of philosophical writing then this may be a book for you. It definitely helped with my project and the idea of the imagination and stories and kind of believing things that may not be true. So I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. So the third book I read this month was Dust by Hugh, Howey, and this is the 3rd instalment of the Wool trilogy. This is a post-apocalyptic adult dystopian type novel. Now, I really loved The Hunger Games, and I read the Maze Runner trilogy and Divergent and all these kind of things, but after a while I got a bit bored of the dystopian YA world and felt that sometimes it got very repetitive and the story was just kind of being retold over and over again but in different worlds. Now this trilogy has renewed my love for dystopian novels. I think this is because I connected so strongly with the characters in these books, and sometimes in YA novels I just can't connect. Now, as this is the final book in the trilogy, I won't graphically describe everything that happens inside it, otherwise that'll ruin the entire trilogy for you. But basically the Wool trilogy is a world where everyone is living in silos under the ground. Something very bad has happened to the world and it has meant that it is very dangerous to live outside, so they all have to live underground. In Wool we follow the story of a group of people in one silo. In Shift we follow the story of the man who had a hand in making the silos and what possibly happened before they all got put in the silos. Shift should be read as the second book, but it is also a prequel to the first book, if that makes sense. So in Dust we rejoin the characters that we had in Wool and pick up with some of the ones that were in Shift, and it rounds off so brilliantly that I can't help but rave about these novels. If you've possibly lost your faith in dystopian and want to maybe pick up something adult, then I suggest you pick up these novels because they are so interesting and so well written. Hugh Howey goes into so much depth and interlocks everything so fantastically. Like, there is so much depth in these novels, I can't even tell you, it's fantastic. So I'm so happy that I picked up this trilogy and gave dystopian another chance because it's absolutely brilliant. 5 out of 5 stars from me. me. Finally this month I wanted to read something that was slightly light-hearted, as I had read The Book Thief, which was quite hard-hitting, and Dust, which was quite an emotional thing, so I decided to pick up The Gates by John Connolly. So last year I read The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly and really enjoyed that, and I would say I enjoyed it a lot more than this one, but even still I did find this to be quite a comical little read. This follows the story of a boy named Samuel Johnson, and he discovers that the gates of hell are being opened in the basement of one of his neighbours' houses. Do you remember the Large Hadron Collider in Switzerland that they were going to turn on a few years ago, and when they did they thought that a big black hole was going to open and the world was going to be sucked in and we were all going to die? Do you remember that? Because I do, quite vividly, and this story is based around that time. Basically they've turned on the Large Hadron Collider and something's happened, which has meant something inside the Large Hadron Collider has somehow managed to detach itself, get out of the machine, and has landed in Samuel Johnson's neighbour's basement, which is when the gates of hell start opening. So as you can probably tell, this is quite a funny read and quite light-hearted and ridiculous at some point, but all in all this book left me on a happy note at the end of the month, and I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. So those are all the books I read in March, but I'm already off to a good start for April, so hopefully my wrap-up will be a lot better next month. If you've read any of the books that I've spoken about today, then I'd love to hear your opinions on them, or if you'd like to share what books you read in March with me, then let me know down below. I'll leave links to my blog, Twitter and Instagram and everything down below if you want to check those out, and I should also leave links to these books on the book depository if you wish to buy them. So I think that's everything for today, guys. I hope you're all having a fantastic day, and I'll see you soon. Bye! Cool, I've actually managed to gather together quite a few books and spend minimal amount of money, which is pretty good in my books. So as I have a few books to show you, I will get on with it. So the first book I received this month was actually a gift from my Amazon wishlist.